My name is Sherry Frumkin Soto. I'm originally from New York. I have been here for 54 years. I graduated college early and I was looking for an adventure, and I found out about the Instituto Allende and that I could live with a family. And I really lucked out because I lived with the best family. I lived with the Familia Origel, and I came down to do one credit toward my master's at the Instituto Allende. But I arrived Friday night to this beautiful patio that smelled like jasmine and this wonderful warm family that just adopted me. And the eldest sister became my eldest sister, and she took me to a party the next day, and I met my husband. And sort of everything after that is just history, because this became my place. I didn't fall in love with San Miguel. I fell in love with Salvador Soto. And we're now married over 50 years, and I'm still in love with Salvador Soto. So I'm a happy camper. We're now sitting in our home, the land for which my husband bought me as an engagement present. I told him I didn't want an engagement present, but then before we got married, he said, "I bought you an engagement present." And I got mad because I didn't want an engagement present. And he said, "Well, maybe if you hear me out, you won't get mad." I said, "Okay, I'll hear you out." He said, "I bought you a piece of property where we could build our home. Or would you like to live with your mother-in-law?" So there's only one answer to that, right? So here we are in our home that we started building 2 weeks after our marriage, and we've been here ever since. I'm down here since '69. We're in the house since '70. Took 6 months to build the first floor, and 10 years later we built the second floor because we couldn't afford to do 2 floors at that age. And so both of our children were born and raised in this, our home. So when I first came down, I didn't speak a word of Spanish. And Salvador spoke fair English. I used to walk around with a little dictionary and a little pad and a little pencil. If I couldn't find it, I would draw it, and that's how I got along. But I learned Spanish really quickly because I was highly motivated. I lived with a family, and I don't know if I fell in love or lust with my husband, but there was something going on. So I was very motivated to learn Spanish, and within a couple of months I was fluent. I was lucky that way. And so I studied at the Instituto. I was going to do 1 credit, but since I wanted to stay, I stayed, and I did have a job to support myself. I took care of a brain-damaged woman who came to live with me. I've gone far in my life. I used to live a block up on Pila Seca. And so she lived with me, and I cared for her, and that put me through my master's. And I'm still here. I'm still happy. Diane asked me if it was difficult adjusting to this life that was so different. Well, it wasn't. I was just lucky. I met so many nice people. All of my husband's friends saw that I wanted to learn Spanish, so everybody spoke Spanish to me. I didn't even know that they knew how to speak English until I spoke Spanish. And then said, "You speak English? How come you never spoke English to me?" "Because you wanted to learn Spanish." So I was lucky, and I learned Spanish. And being bilingual is important to me. And I've been working as a volunteer on the board of the Vasconcelos School, which is bilingual school, where my children attended, fortunately, because before that I didn't know where they were going to go to school because I wasn't happy with the public education in San Miguel at that time, and there was nothing else. So the Vasconcelos School which is still a very good bilingual school, and this is its 50th year. So my children got in at the beginning of that school, and I'm still on the board. And it's part of our community. And my sister used to say to me, a friend of my sister's once asked me, so what's it like living in Mexico? Is it really different? And I said, no, it's just like living anywhere. And my sister said, what are you talking about? You shop in a market. You know, the streets are cobblestones. There's nothing. And I said, yeah, but it's all fine. When I came into San Miguel, there used to be a sign that said population 17,000. And Salvador said, no, that's not true anymore. There was a census, and now we're 25,000. And that's the municipality. And so it's like everybody knew everybody. And Diane asked me if I had American friends or Mexican friends. I had American friends, I had Mexican friends. Everybody was friendly. And I'm American, my husband's Mexican. We had Mexican friends, we had American friends. It was, you know, it didn't make a difference, and it still doesn't. When my parents retired, I assumed, since I lived in Mexico, that they were going to come and retire to Mexico and not Florida or California or something. And they weren't sure because they didn't speak Spanish, and they weren't sure they were going to like it. So first I rented a few beautiful houses for them and introduced them. I used to have coffee clutches and invite really nice people for them to meet, and then they met really nice people and they had really nice friends, and they became very happy here and joined the golf club. And my mother was active in Patronato Pro Niños, as I have been for the last over 40 years. When I started at Patronato Pro Niños, I was the kid. Now I'm not. But I'm still active on the board because I shudder to think if we didn't exist, what would these children do without us? So I'll be on the board till the day I die, or till the day I don't function anymore. And going back to my parents, after renting here for a few years, we built a house for them. We have a door that attaches to what was my mom's house. So that was convenient for a while. A long while. My mother lived here for over 20 years. And my children were born and raised here, and my daughter is still here. She went away to college. She went away to high school. And my son stayed here for high school. Actually, my daughter helped me talk him into it. When they put the UVM here, it was around the corner, and it was here, and she said, then you're going to go to college, and you'll never have a hot meal again in your life, so stay home. And he did, and then he went to Washington, and he's still in Washington now with his wife and 2 children, and he married a gringa. But he has never spoken a word of English to his children. As I spoke only English to my children, he speaks only Spanish to his 2 boys, and they answer him in Spanish. So it's important to us that they be bicultural and bilingual. Well, as I said, I didn't fall in love with San Miguel de Allende. A lot of people came and, oh, this quaint little town. Well, I'm a New Yorker. And I never thought that any place was really better than New York. But I'm flexible. I'm easy. As long as I have nice friends, I could be happy. So I've always been happy because I've always had nice friends. And I have a wonderful family. My husband is one of 6 children. I have 22 nieces and nephews who love me. I love them. And we have a great relationship. So I've always been surrounded by good people, good family, and I'm very at home here. And at this point in my life, I would never live in the States again. I mean, this is my home. I visit my son on a very frequent basis, but we don't want to live there. This is home. This is always going to be home. And it's Daniel, my daughter stayed here. My son who lives in DC, this is still home. And my grandchildren, this is their son Miguel home. They're little, they're 5 and 7, but they know that this is their son Miguel home, and that's what they call it. And they have their room, and it's all little boy's room. And this is home for them too. And it always will be. And they come to camp here in the summertime for a few weeks and acclimatize, live the culture, play with little Mexican kids. And that's important to us. How things have changed over the last 54 years that I've been here. One thing that's changed is you can get a telephone. When I built my mother's house, I had to string out a line for her to have a party line because it was impossible to get a telephone. And my mother finally got a telephone that cost her $4,000 to acquire from somebody who was selling it to her. So we didn't have a lot of stuff. But things were different and the same. I mean, for example, I used to be able to drive my car up and park in front of any place I wanted to go. Any place. If I was going to the library, I parked in front of the library. If I'm going to the supermarket, I parked in front of the supermarket. And the supermarket was Super Sanchez, which was this big. And or I would, drive to the market. Wherever I was going, there was no problem parking. There weren't too many cars, and I think there were at, I don't know, half a dozen, maybe 10 taxis. And when I would get into a taxi, I would just say, "Take me home, please." And they knew where I lived. Or "Take me to my husband's office, please." And they knew where that was. And that's the kind of town it was. Everybody knew everybody. Now, I mean, like I used to go to the Angela Peralta for something in the theater, and I knew 97% of the people in the theater. Now, I know maybe 3% of the people in the theater. There are a lot of new people in town, and every place changed. I mean, New York's changed too. Who knows how I would feel about living in New York today, because it's a lot different than it was 50 years ago. But, San Miguel's a little congested for my liking, but besides that, it's still a good place to be. Before, when I first came down here, and I lived with the family, the key was this big, and it was big bronze key, to the door. I lived on Hernandez Macias, and we didn't use the key very much, only at night. And when Salvador would pick me up for a date, I would say, "Here, you carry this key," because it was heavy. But all day long, we just had a string that we pulled to open the door, because crime was not an issue. I mean, I could walk anywhere, anytime, because there were no threats. It was easy. And I guess I had an easy time of it. I was accepted in both communities because immediately everybody knew I was Salvador Soto's girlfriend. So I was accepted into the Mexican community because, well, it helped that I learned Spanish. Because if you don't speak Spanish, and that was yesterday and today, and I think it will always be, if you don't speak Spanish, you're really never going to be at home here, and you're really never going to feel part of San Miguel. Because if you can't talk to everybody, and anybody who knows me knows I'm chatty, and so I had to speak Spanish because how was I going to speak to this whole world of Spanish-speaking people if I didn't speak Spanish? So I was motivated and I learned Spanish, and that makes a big difference. Because the people who come here and isolate themselves in the American community are missing a lot, because they're missing the whole Mexican culture, because they don't acculturate. And, well, I live with a Mexican man, and he lives with his gringa, and for us it works. We were not a couple meant to happen, but we still work. And for us, I don't know, it just goes either way. It's just, this is where we live. It's a funny little town. It's that when he was in college, they used to ask him, one of his teachers used to ask him, do you need a passport to go to San Miguel? Because at that time, and maybe there were hundreds, totally not thousands, hundreds of gringos in 1969, and they still had that impression that it was a gringo town. But then again, it was a small town. Now, I mean, I don't even know all the names of the colonias in San Miguel, and my husband works in real estate, and it's like, there's always something coming up. So, where's that? Because there's so many new that keep on building. So I don't know what San Miguel is going to turn out to be. Probably I won't live long enough to worry about it. But you know, San Miguel's changed a lot and stayed the same a lot. Because, I don't know, I guess it's very easy to live here as a foreigner, because San Miguelenses are just used to foreigners. And a lot of people speak English, and you don't have to speak Spanish. And the nice thing about the Mexican community is, if they see you want to speak Spanish, no matter how poor your Spanish is, they laugh with you, not at you. And they help you. And nobody discriminates against you because you're a foreigner or because you don't speak the language. They try. And that's why I've always found San Miguel easy. San Miguel I find easy because maybe now some of the people who come in, you know, like really care about the way you dress and the car you drive and things like that. Well, I don't care about those people so much, so that doesn't matter to me. But the nice thing I've always found in San Miguel is you go to a party, and there's always party, and somebody comes in jeans and a polo shirt, and somebody else comes dressed to the hilt and all diamond up, and nobody cares. Because San Miguel is just easy that way. It's open, and people are accepting. And I think that's what I most like about San Miguel, that people are whoever they want to be, and you can be whoever you want to be. And if there's somebody who cares about it, well, that's their problem, because most people just don't care. People just accept you for who you are.
I'm sure there's a lot more.